Hello, my name is Bob Johnston. I'm an oceanographer and a retired civil servant. During my career, I worked as a research scientist for the U.S. Navy, where I specialized in working on environmental projects for the Navy. Currently, I'm a small business owner and a part-time instructor at Western Washington University's College of the Environment. I put this presentation together for the 2026 meeting of the Pacific Estuarine Research Society in Newport, Oregon, which is the ancestral home of the Aquinnah tribe. And what I want to talk about are things that I can do that can help with ecosystem recovery and management in the Anthropocene. Because if I can do it, then maybe other people can also do it as well. I would also like to acknowledge the contribution of my life partner and confidant, Kirsten. She's a master gardener, she's a beekeeper, she's a mycology expert, and so I'd like to share some ideas we have of things that we can do to help improve the ecosystem. Okay, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the standard American diet, which is just sad. It consists of processed foods, it's high in sugar and hydrogenated oils, it's low in fiber, and that diet is harming our health and is harming the planet's life support system to which we are accustomed. This was discussed in Robert Lustig's book, Metabolical, and other places. And Michael Pollan came out with a few years ago that people should eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. And Robert Lustig boiled that down to protect the liver and feed the gut. And this has to do with the understanding that you're not just eating for yourself, you're eating for the other 6 trillion organisms that make up your microbiome. That you have to feed them good food and food that they need, or they're going to make you sick. And recently, Robert Lustig updated his mnemonic to protect the liver, feed the gut, support the brain. And this is science-based in terms of what food that you are eating and what it can do for your health. And also how it can help with protecting the life support system on this planet. So what I want to do is eliminate sugar and processed food from my diet. So now what I want to talk about is donut economics. Have any of you heard of donut economics before? You've probably heard in your whole life, there's only 2 kinds of economic systems, capitalism and communism. But this idea of donut economics, Debbie Raworth came out with a book in 2017, and she had a TED talk in 2018. But what she's describing is this, we have this ecological ceiling, and in this circle is the safe and just space for humanity. So if we stay within this ecological ceiling, we're not harming the ecosystem. But we still need to consume resources. We have to provide housing. And so if we go below this line, then we're going to have a shortfall in terms of malnutrition, shelter, places that everybody has access to education, so forth. So what we want to do is stay within this green boundary by developing and working towards a regenerative and distributed economy. Now, so in 2019, the Eat Lancet Commission came up with what they call the planetary health plate, which half of it consists of approximately half consists of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and then a modest amount of animal protein. And if you compare that to what we're actually consuming in North America, we're way overshooting in the amount of meat, red meat. This is starchy vegetables. This is primarily French fries. Here are eggs, chicken. This is dairy, and so we're way behind in terms of the fruit, vegetables, nuts. This is seafood here. So I really want to help choose food that improves my health and also the planet's life support system. So in 2025, the donut was updated, and you can see that we're exceeding many of these planetary boundaries for nutrient pollution, chemical pollution, climate change, biodiversity loss, land conversion, freshwater disruption, but we're also falling short in the social foundation in terms of amount of food and water, political and equality factors that are being, there's a shortfall. And what's causing that? Well, this comes from the Dasgupta review on the economics of biodiversity. And basically, our economic growth is at the expense of natural capital. So here's the produced capital, or this is what's normally called the gross domestic product, or GNP. And it goes up, right? So that's good. The economy's going up, but it's not counting the natural capital that's being taken away, and we're only having a small net increase. And so the natural capital, we're essentially, our economic system, we're paying ourselves to destroy nature, because we don't pay anything for extracting from nature, and we're just extract, consume, throw away. And what that means is that it's unsustainable, because we're using up the biosphere, and that's affecting the biosphere's ability to regenerate. So as the total amount, the stock of the biosphere goes down, the rate of regeneration is going down. And based on the Dasgupta review, we're right now consuming 1.6 Earths, and which is not sustainable. So sustainability means that we're supporting nature's regenerating and reducing our demands on it by reducing our ecological footprint and allowing nature to regenerate. So then this fall, a report came out that we've now exceeded 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, and the latest one is exceeding ocean acidification here. So we're way over exceeding the planetary boundaries, and this will have dire effects on seafood production, because of the ocean acidification is disrupting the ability of zooplankton to form calcareous shells and other things. So here's a list of recent references on donut social and planetary boundaries. This will be, you're able to get the handout, and you can download these articles and take a look at them. I'm also want to talk about this work that's been done by Ben Halpern's group at the University of California, Santa Barbara, about estimating the environmental footprint of food production. So this comes from his paper, and also from a webinar that he gave in 2023 about mapping the environmental footprint of food production. So basically what he's looking at is the means of how we're producing food in terms of, okay, so this is livestock, and then whether it's producing greenhouse gases, causing disturbance, releasing nitrogen or phosphorus, and diverting water. So each one of these components, so here's the manure, the feed, the land use and infrastructure, water consumption, enteric fermentation, that's the production of methane by ruminants, which is much more, way stronger greenhouse gas than just CO2. Here's aquaculture here, and then crops, taking into account the fertilizers, pesticides, land use, field maintenance, water consumption. And then over here we have fisheries, and this includes vessel use and harvest. And what is their cumulative impact on the environmental footprint? So, spoiler alert, what foods have the greatest impact? So I'll let you think about that, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. I also want to talk about things that we can do in our homes, in our garden, by having composting, rain garden, pollinator hotels. We want to reduce garbage and recycling by not buying a bunch of crap in the first place. I mean, this has something to do with, with Ralph Nader, said, 50 years ago, as a consumer, every time you buy something, you're voting, that it should exist in the marketplace. So if you don't buy crap, then they're not going to be able to sell it. Looking at pesticide, herbicide free, planting fruit trees and berries, conserving water, and for a while we have backyard chickens. We also had geese and ducks and sheep, and even if you can't produce this in your own garden, you can also support community supported aquaculture. And so also, for example, my daughter lives in an apartment in Brussels, and she has a worm bin. And, her friends are always joking about, oh, how are your worms doing? Or, when she goes on vacation or out of town, she has to have friends come over and take care of her worms. And so this idea of regenerative farming, instead of, switching from conventional monoculture, which requires, large inputs of fossil fuels and fertilizers, to more of a regenerative farming, where you're trying to create as many relationships between things as possible. And also for seafood, to choose healthy and sustainable seafood. And one of the things that we want to do is try to produce as much of our own food as is possible. Now, this comes from the International Panel on Climate Change. In their 2023 report, we're talking about the best opportunities for scaling up climate action. And you can see here, by reducing the kind of food that we're consuming, by changing the food that we're consuming, we could have a significant impact on the amount of CO2 that's being released. And also by having better infrastructure in terms of transportation systems, buildings, and industry, more energy efficient. So I want to contribute to this by increasing demand for good food and infrastructure, and reducing the demand for energy. Okay, so another spoiler alert. What's driving the energy footprint? So that's another thing you can think about. Here's an aspect I'd like to talk about. It's called the commercial determinants of health. This came out in 2023, also as part of the Lancet series. And so basically what we have is a system that's being corrupted by using money to shape policy that stimulates sales. And so here's some examples: alcohol, tobacco, harmful products. It increases the consumption. That generates money by externalizing costs, causing impacts to health and environment, which is leading to more profits, which is then used to further stimulate and change the policy so they control. And so what is needed is a way to prioritize public interests over commercial profit. So if profit is the only thing that you're looking at, then you end up with the scales tilted way over on this side. But to try to balance, prioritize public interest, so that means not just looking at profit, but looking at, you've probably heard of the triple bottom line, looking at not only profit, but also people, and also the planet, the environmental footprint. And this is going to take work to rebalance this by good governments, civil society and groups, commercial actors, academia and research, as well as health actors. And so this, I think, has a role for organizations like SURF and PERS that we can serve as civil society to fact check and report on, but also individual members, belong and work for government agencies. They work for private companies. They're involved in academic research. And so there's a way to then help prioritize and balance the system that is currently overloaded in the case of just producing profit. So for this, we do not reward bad actors. I mean, I think Jeff Bezos has plenty of money. Don't need to, oh yeah, Amazon is so convenient, but actually I have enough money already. So I like to think about using our pecuniary power to influence beneficial use and beneficial goods and services. So this is not just how you spend your money and what you put your money, but it also includes what you put your energy, what you put your life force towards supporting. So this comes from Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. And in 2021, she gave a seminar at the Outback Farm at Fairhaven College at Western as a webinar. And this is a screenshot that I took from her seminar. And so here's the typical way of, we think of this organizing principle that, at the very top of the system is man, right? And everything else is subservient. But in reality, we're all in this together. We're all kinfolk. We are all in this together, equally deserving. And this also comes into with some work that's done by Suzanne Simard. Suzanne Simard is a forester. She works at the University of British Columbia. She got her PhD from Oregon State here. And so she came out with this book, Finding the Mother Tree. And her research shows this linkage in the forest of trees. So this network is a network of trees and other plants and shrubs that are sharing nutrients and information through the mycelium network in the soil. Another book is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. Again, how we're part of this weave of creation. Another book I like to point out is The Overstory by Richard Powers. And this is the importance of being able to tell a story of what's going on and how people can understand what their role, what the role is. And then other things, even Pope Francis launched an academic program for ecological conversion or to forming an ecological conscience, and how best to protect creation from nefarious deeds. And also Pope Leo has followed that up with his own encyclical. And then there's more work being done on the rights of nature, that nature itself has a right, and it's not just there for extracting for profit. And so what I want to do is treat all with respect, compassion, and understanding. So by having this idea of giving back and being responsible to a community, we can further place-based ecology, pride of belonging, and responsibility to the community, and also having fun. So here's my wife working at a community garden. I have this adopt a spot to pick up trash, and I also coordinate tennis. So if you want to find out about that. So now I'd like to talk about, this reminds me of a time we were going on a family vacation. And we were going to our seats on the plane, and my daughter, who was about 7 or 8 years old, said, Dad, what's this? And she was pointing to the armrest, and I looked down, and I said, oh, well, that's an ashtray. And she said, what? An ashtray? And she could not even conceive of the situation that somebody would smoke on an airplane. Why would anybody smoke on an airplane? And, that hit me. That I thought about that. It wasn't that long ago. When you got on an airplane, smoking or non-smoking. And, it didn't really matter because you're going to be breathing smoke in the plane. And so now, it does show that things can change. And if you would have asked somebody, asked me back in the 80s, is there ever going to be a time when people aren't smoking on an airplane? You couldn't conceive of it, but it has happened. It has changed. So things can change, and they can change if people work on it. Okay, so now I want to talk about some of the spoiler alerts I talked to you about. So this is the footprint, mapping the environmental footprint of food from the ocean and land. So over here at the top we have pig's meat. So this is the water usage. So these are color-coded water. Here's the nutrient pollution from both the feed and the animal operations, the greenhouse gas emissions, and the disturbance of the landscape. And the next is cattle meat. Doesn't have the same amount of nutrient loss, but at much higher greenhouse gas emissions. And then the next, there's a change of scale here. So this is rice, and rice is there because of this a lot of use of water that's required, as well as greenhouse gas emissions, which is also similar for wheat. And then the top 5 is milk and dairy products, which comes out here. And then you can look down this list. Now, if you include the fishing, and that's way down here on a lower scale. And here you have demersal fishing, so you have greenhouse gas emissions from fuel and transportation of vessels. But the main thing here for demersal fishing is disturbance of the bottom, impacting the sediment. So this comes out, down here about 0.02. And then other fishing, there's not as much disturbance. So the authors admit that they're only looking at, the disturbance and greenhouse gas emissions. They're not taking into account the effects of biodiversity from overfishing and bycatch loss and other things like that. So that's missing from this particular analysis. So I mentioned that that I want to choose healthy and sustainable seafood, because I believe that if seafood lovers do not demand sustainable seafood, there will not be any seafood left to eat. And here are some seafood consumer guides that you can use to help guide your consumption of seafood. And then in Ben Halpin's seminar, he made some recommendations and made the point that some simple things can make a big difference. So he recommends eating less factory farm meat, eating more mussels, oysters, and clams. This has a benefit because if you're supporting mussels and oysters, harvested from local waters, that also is an impetus to make sure we have clean water where they can be harvested from. And he also recommends eat invasive species. So this is a feral pig here. But, if you think about this, choosing seafood versus, a hot dog. Well, gee, doesn't that hot dog look really good? Well, you hear a lot about, contaminants in seafood and sources of contamination, but you never hear about contaminants that are in a hot dog. So I want to choose food that improves the health of people and planet. Now, what's driving the cost of energy? So I'm showing here a graph that shows the price of a barrel of oil from 1950 to 2020. And you can see, going up and down. And over here, this graph shows, the sources of energy that's being consumed in the United States. So the bottom here is coal, natural gas. This is petroleum, nuclear, and these are renewables. So now the renewables are increasing, but the overall energy footprint is not going down. We're just increasing more and more energy, except for one point here, and that is in 2008 when the stock market melted down and the price of oil shot up to almost $200 a barrel. And suddenly there was a huge slack in the demand for oil, which you can see here. And I was at that time, if you were in Seattle, you couldn't even get a seat on the bus. There were so many people, trying to ride the bus. People were getting rid of their gas guzzlers, trying to find ways to cut down on their energy costs, and they weren't doing it to save the environment. They were doing it because of the cost. Well, shortly after that, you can see how the price of oil went back down and then leveled out here. And so by that time, by the 2010 or so, okay, the SUVs are back on the menu. So the cost of oil is one of the drivers. And what I want to do is lower my energy footprint by driving less, increasing efficiency of home and energy use, and eliminating waste. Going back to this idea of commercial determinants of health, what the authors are proposing here is a way of measuring commercial diversity. And so if you look at a particular business, you can look at their practices. Are they corrupt? Do they sell harmful products or provide an essential service? What are the nature of its profits? How does it operate? Is it transparent? How is it organized? And you could compare these different companies and make a conscious decision of who you want to do business with. So maybe you would rather do business with this commercial entity that doesn't have such a large footprint. Maybe the cost would be a little bit higher, but you would have, you would meet your needs and also help preserve the ecosystem. So again, I don't want to reward bad actors. I want to use my pecuniary power to influence beneficial goods and services. So in the fall of 2025, I was teaching a class up at Western when Dr. Jane Goodall passed away. And she had visited Western in 2018 and made a lecture, and Western recorded a YouTube of her lecture. And so I'd like to play a clip from her lecture at Western from 2018.
Understand, each one of you listening to me now, that your life matters, that every day you live you make some impact on the world around you, and you have a choice as to what kind of impact you're going to make. So think about the consequences of the little choices you make each day. What you buy, where did it come from, how was it made, did it harm the environment, did it lead to cruelty to animals, like in intensive animal farming or some products that have still tested animals? Is it cheap because of child slave labor? And start making ethical choices. You will then be making a difference in the future of the whole planet, because it's not just you. As awareness spreads around the planet, more and more people are making these ethical choices once they understand that what they do, what you do, does truly make a difference.
So what I want to do is make good choices. All right, so here's a summary of actions that I want to do, and I think others could also do similar things, and that will make a big difference in preserving not only our health, but also the health of the planet's life support system. Okay, thank you very much. Here's a shot of some of the animals that we had. I think this changes your perception about food when you have a personal relationship with your food. All the references that I cited in this presentation are available on a Zotero list that you can access, or you can contact me from my email there. Thank you very much.